Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of our Town Hall series, sponsored by Certified PA Consulting. I'm Kasey D'Amato, president of Certified PA Consulting. I can't talk today. And every week we put out a video to help you understand the business of medicine, advance your career as a PA, NP, or physician who wants to understand more about PA salaries, negotiation strategies, contract terms, starting a business, processes, protocols, staff management, staff retention, all those things. We started Certified PA Consulting back in 2009, myself and my partner, Catherine. We are PAs and we also have been practice managers, and we've been involved in these complex business decisions. We've been privy to business financials and we've learned a lot over our lifetime of our career since 2003 about the business of medicine. And now we devote a lot of time to helping people understand salary structures, why they're structured the way that they are, negotiation strategies that will help both the practice, the facility, and the PA. So it helps retain really good providers and also helps people stay motivated to want to stay long-term in a certain facility because they feel well compensated. And we help people understand when you're a good fit and when you're not a good fit. So hopefully you find our video series helpful. This week we're talking about bonus structures and why there's so many different structures, not salaries, not whether you're paid hourly or annual salary. We're not talking about that. We're talking about bonus specifically. What is in addition to the set salary, or what replaces sometimes that traditional hourly or annual salary? And why are there different bonus structures? So one thing I just want to remind everybody that was sort of eye-opening when we first started learning about business is that obviously here in the United States, business is still, medicine is still a private business. So this means that it's important to understand cash flow in a business, especially private practice. Hospital is a bit more complex because there's different money coming from different departments. But in private practice, it's critical to understand cash flow and how the business works because it's extremely variable. And it can vary a lot, even within the same specialty, from practice to practice, the way things operate and the way the cash flows. And if you think about certain specialties, one provider in a specialty that has minimal procedures, an annual revenue from that one provider might be maybe $400,000. And in a specialty with heavy procedures, that revenue from the annual revenue from that provider will be well over $1 million. We've had clients as high as 1.4 million and upwards of that even. So that's $1 million a year different in revenue. So of course, salary structures are going to be really, really different from specialty to specialty and even practice to practice within the same specialty. We have worked with clients. We work with dozens of clients every single week and help people understand salary structures and why they are the way they are and help them with their negotiation strategy. And we have clients even within the same specialty that full-time may be easily $500,000 difference per year within the same specialty. So it's really important to think about how the cash flows and what are some of the things that factor that. Procedures, patient volume, payer type, right? So private insurance and Medicare will have a certain type of reimbursement, which is much different than Medicaid, which is much different than cash patients. So these are all the things to think about that will really impact the way the cash flows, which will impact the bonus type of structure. There's really, in my opinion, I would say, we've been doing this a very long time, about 3 common bonus structures, if you will. The first one I would say is really more, I don't know if we can even call it a bonus because it's sort of a standalone thing, and that is a straight productivity compensation package. And that means that a PA is paid a percentage of the revenue that they generate, and typically that's paid out per month. So this is fairly common for experienced PAs in certain specialties. It's very common in dermatology to be paid straight productivity, a straight percentage of the revenue that you generate. It's very, very common to see this, particularly in dermatology. We see in other specialties here and there, but it's not as common as it is in dermatology. And it can work really, really well for the right PA with the right experience, with a solid patient volume on their schedule. It can work really, really well. Because then you have some control and some incentive to maintain your productivity, right? And it can be really nice. You don't really have to negotiate because if you want to double book yourself or be more efficient, you're going to make more money. So straight productivity is a kind of a common structure in some specialties. Another one that's probably even more common than that is a base salary plus a percentage of collections or a bonus based on RVUs, relative value units, which we have a whole nother video on that. So this type of structure would have a base salary, let's call it $100,000 a year, and then there would be a bonus in addition to that based on revenue generated or based on meeting RVU thresholds or benchmarks. So this one is really, really common. We see it a lot. And one thing that I want to point out is there's a bit of a sliding scale here. And what I mean by that is that you can negotiate a lower base salary and a higher percentage. So you could drop down to like a $90K annual salary and bump up your percentage, or vice versa. You can negotiate a higher base salary and lower percentage, meaning you can negotiate 120, 125, 130, 140, 150 on your base salary, and a much, much, much lower, the percentage would get lower and lower and lower as your base salary gets higher. Now, what's interesting to note is over the last, oh my gosh, we've been doing this, now almost 20 years. I guess 15 years. And so over the last 14, 15 years since we've been doing this, we see definitely the most lucrative structures are in the productivity or the higher percentage. The lower base salary or no base salary with a higher percentage typically ends up being the most lucrative. There's exceptions to that rule, but typically ends up being the more lucrative if you're experienced with a solid patient following. That usually works out more lucrative for you. Now, the third, I would say, not the last, there's lots of other options, but the third most common type of bonus structure would be a bonus that kicks in base salary and then a bonus that kicks in with a certain threshold or benchmark of collections. Sometimes people will use a base salary multiple, so like 2 or 3 times base salary. So if it's $100,000 base salary, then maybe it's 2 or 3 times. So after 200,000 or 300,000, then there's a percentage, right? Because there's more profit at that point. Up until that point, you're sort of covering yourself, your own base salary, you're covering your benefit package, you're covering your dedicated staff support, and then there's like more profit. So the bonus can make sense to kick in after a threshold in some instances. And sometimes that bonus percentage can be higher because you've already kind of covered a lot of those initial business expenses. So that's a really common structure that we see is a base salary and then a bonus after a benchmark or threshold. Same thing with RVUs. There can be a bonus based on a certain number of RVUs being met, a specific bonus. So we do see that a lot as well. So the most common type of bonus structures, really there's 3. One, again, maybe you could call it salary structure, is straight productivity, a straight percentage of what you generate, how much revenue you generate paid per month. 2, a base salary with a percentage of what you generate, and that is a sliding scale. Remember, you can adjust base, often you can adjust base up, percentage down, or base down, percentage up. You can play around with that. And 3, a base salary and then a percentage after a threshold, which kind of covers your own expenses to the practice. And that typically would be a little bit higher percentage. So how do you really know what's reasonable, which I'm sure is what a lot of you are wondering while you're watching this video. The general rule is when you add up your entire compensation, most practices and facilities cannot afford much more than like mid 30% all in if you have a moderate benefit package. If you have a very heavy benefit package and a lot of dedicated staff support, that might swing a little bit lower. And if you have hardly any benefits and like you don't even have a medical assistant, you do everything yourself, that maybe can swing a little bit higher. And again, it's really all related to your revenue as well. The higher your revenue is, also, of course, there's more profit. So a lot of times there's more ability to negotiate a little bit higher in that range. So there's outliers, and we had a client just this week that was in the 40s. So there's definitely outliers. But for most business models, when you add together the base plus the productivity or the base plus the bonus, however you want to look at that, typically as a general rule, the max that most practices could potentially afford would be in that low to mid 30% range of your collections. Again, that's with a moderate benefit package and a moderate to light staff support. If you have heavy benefits and heavy staff, they may not be able to afford that. Or if you have very little benefits and no staff, they might be able to afford a little bit more percentage of your collections. So I hope that's helpful. Don't forget, we have free webinars related to how to determine if your salary is fair, salary trends. We've got PDF downloads for negotiation strategies. We've got an entire on-demand course. Check the links below. If you want to become an expert negotiator and learn more about all this, definitely register for Master the Boss Mindset, our on-demand negotiation masterclass. It's about 6 hours with a 15-page workbook. It will teach you how to become an expert negotiator. It will completely teach you how to understand salary structures and how to effectively negotiate in your particular role. So I hope that our resources are helpful for you, and I will see you next week.